June 9th, 2012, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 was released on the world. Now, most of you know that the game faded out quickly compared to other Tekkens, in part due to a variety of factors, with the large one being the absolute galaxy brain that was required to play it at a high level. Also, if you thought combos in Tekken 7 were long, you better call the Bachman-Turner Overdrive, because you ain't seen nothing yet. I won't go into this too deeply, because if you're watching this, the info is all out there and you probably already know it all, but Tekken Tag 2 was a financial failure, and the competitive scene fanned out quickly. This was the end of Tekken as a series as far as higher-ups at Namco were concerned, as Tekken Tag 2, despite its features and failures, really was a love letter to the series. Every character ever, music from all the games, a jukebox feature, past games, movies, training modes, and more were all included. But despite all of this, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 was a flop. Katsuhiro Harada himself went before the powers that be and begged for a small budget to create just one more Tekken in an attempt to redeem the franchise. And it worked! Vanilla Tekken 7 showed up in arcades something like literally 30 years ago, and the game has had a long road to get to where it is now. 4 seasons of DLC, tons of balance patches, controversies over characters, live tournaments, online tournaments, you name it, Tekken 7 has had it all at this point. And people are still playing the game, with the Tekken Online Challenge 2021 already underway as I speak. That said, this puts Tekken 8 in a strange place. Tekken 7 was made on a pittance, and it shows. Tekken console offerings have always been known for their sizable single-player offerings to keep casual players coming back, but this time Tekken 7's content was sparse. A simple 1-hour story mode and a series of 1v1 fights with an in-game cutscene were all casual players would get story-wise. Gone were the beautifully rendered CGI endings and intro artwork, bonus modes, unlockable characters, and team battles of games of yore. The arcade mode itself is even cut to only being 5 stages long as opposed to the prior game's 10-ish stages. Tekken 7 proved that Tekken can be successful, but Tekken Tag 2 had most of the things that Tekken 7 launched without and still doesn't have, and it still failed. If making Tekken 8 were just as simple as stuffing content back in and releasing it, Namco probably would have already done that by now. Instead, they'll have to strike a careful balance between content for casuals and advanced players if they want Tekken 8 to succeed. All that said, if Harada called me up tomorrow and asked me to make Tekken 8, here's what I personally would like to see for the Tekken series' inevitable follow-up to their most successful Tekken ever. Let's start with the easy stuff. If you aren't a competitive player, you probably quit playing Tekken 7 by now because there is honestly nothing for you to do anymore. You finish the story mode on day 1, and then maybe you finish the character episodes if you cared that much, and after that you realize you got grifted for $60. Here is the main menu of Tekken 7 as it stands today. It really hasn't changed too much since launch. There's a story option, which lets you play the game's hour-long story mode, and several pointless character episodes, which consist of 1 fight each and an in-engine cutscene ending. The budget for the story this time around was bare bones, and it shows, with most of the characters introduced in Tekken 7 not even showing up in the story mode's main plot, which makes them feel useless. Compare this to something like Mortal Kombat X, who at least makes a point to have every character appear in the story, even if they aren't playable. Online is, well, online and consists of player and ranked matches and is likely the only reason to buy Tekken 7 anymore these days. Offline contains Arcade Battle, which is pointless because there are no endings and it's very short, and also Treasure Battle, which is just Ghost Battle from earlier Tekkens, but somehow they made it less content stuff than it was before. Versus Battle and Practice are exactly what they sound like, but you can't really call these features or even unique modes since a fighting game without these in 2021 would be laughed out of existence. My Replay and Tips is one of the sparing few additions to the game since launch, and it is a useful feature, but casual players really aren't going to care about why they keep getting floated out of their 36 frame startup move. You also have to pay to unlock its full potential, with frame data being hidden behind a DLC paywall. You all know what customization and gallery are. Dress up is fun, but it's not something that's going to keep casual players coming back for more than a few months at best. Gallery lets you view the game's few sparse CGI cutscenes and other offerings once you see them in game, or unlock them with fight money early, but who cares? They also felt the need to include movies from older Tekkens, but I mean, I can watch all of this on YouTube. You aren't really giving me anything new. It's a nice touch, but again, all it does is draw attention to how little of this stuff Tekken 7 got due to its shoestring budget. Options, player information, and store are all self-explanatory and to be found in any game these days. Tekken Bowl is a casual mode that was added alongside Season 1 to try and stem the tide for the lack of single-player content, but the mode is fairly uninspired and was quickly forgotten by everyone, especially when compared to its much-loved Tekken Tag Tournament 1 counterpart. Compared to the offerings in Tekken 6 released all the way back on March 18th of 2015, Tekken 7 starts to look a bit sparse on the single-player side. I mean, here's just the offline modes from Tekken 6, and it doesn't even include the game's story, the somewhat silly-sounding scenario campaign, which had its own world map, CGI endings for everyone, and a beat-em-up game that included character-specific dialogue written for every character in the game. Tekken 8 needs to be that game that casual Tekken fans can boot up and play for more than a few days again. They don't have to make a full-fledged beat-em-up story mode like Tekken 6, but something to make the other characters feel like they matter would go a long way. If I had my way, I would move character endings back to arcade mode and increase the arcade mode back to 10 stages. Create a CGI ending for each character, or at least some sort of unique non-in-game ending that wraps up each character's story arc in the game. For characters that are prominent in the story mode like Lee, Lars, Elisa, etc., just show a CGI sequence of them doing something cool, like they did with Lars and Elisa in the Tekken 6 PSP port. I think everyone will be more than okay with that outcome if a character is featured prominently as a main character in the story. This would make the arcade mode feel like it was worth playing, while not taking anything away from the game's story mode in whatever form it may take. Besides this, you really need series staples like Team Battle, Customization, Time Attack, and some other fun bonus mode like Tekken Ball. Some of these, like Team Battle and Time Attack, sound very simple and are really just variants of existing gameplay modes, but people noticed that they were gone, and adding them back would go a long way towards making Tekken feel like it has a full offering of single-player content again. And if it sounds like I'm just whining about casual stuff, I am, but hear me out. Pro players start out as casual players. Very few people pick up a Tekken game with the intent of winning Evo. Most people like that are casuals who love the game so much that they want more. MK Tom Brady over on his channel said something about Mortal Kombat one time, in that casuals don't care about in-depth mechanics. So you should design in-depth mechanics for pro players, and then provide an offering of appealing single-player content to casual players, and thus, more of them will stick around and convert into long-term pro players. Much of Tekken 7's appeal was the simplification of core gameplay compared to Tekken Tag Tournament 2. This is my greatest worry for Tekken 8. While Tekken 7 simplified some things that needed simplifying, for example breaking generic throws requiring only one button, and increasing the frame window to react to said throws, overall, they also greatly dumbed down the utility of movement as a whole. Many characters have moves that cover wide ranges of territory and track to both directions, at least somewhat. There are some characters that have things that can only be described as Tekken 7 moves. One example would be Zafina's forward forward 4. This is a long-reaching mid that tracks both ways and is completely safe on block. Think of it like a better version of Lee's forward forward 3. There's no reason not to throw this move out with reckless abandon, because unless you whiff completely, and it's hard to, you won't be punished for it. Movement has always been a core function of Tekken, and my fear is that they will break it down to be even weaker with Tekken 8. But here's hoping we see a boost to the usefulness of movement and less moves that do everything and more moves with certain utilities, which was very much the case for earlier Tekkens. Speaking of mechanics, let's talk about Rage Art and Rage Drive. Rage was first introduced in Tekken 6. If you're learning about Tekken for the first time in this video, Rage is something that activates when you fall below a certain amount of health, which makes your character turn red and do more damage, In Tekken 6, this damage was insane and was slightly reduced in Tekken Tag 2 and Tekken 7, but it still remains a very powerful tool. Make no mistake, Rage is a comeback mechanic that exists to give you the chance to come back from losing. While some people see this as just part of the game, others will bemoan the death of the hardcore fighter to casualization. I really don't have too much of a problem with Rage itself. If I got to pick whether it stayed or went, I'd probably pick for it to go, but at this point, I've just accepted it. What I have a real problem with is Rage Arts. Rage Arts are like super moves that you activate at the press of a button when your character has rage. The vast majority of them are launch punishable on block, but they have infinite armor and you cannot be thrown or load out of a Rage Art like you can with armor moves. The idea of a super move works in 2D games is they're usually tied to some sort of bar or other resource. In Tekken though, it's like a switch is flipped when your health gets low that allows you to use it, and it returns every single round when your rage is activated. Do note that using the Rage Art and missing it will make it so that you can't use it again for that round. Rage Arts in Tekken stop the match to play an animation, and then it continues if the attack isn't blocked or whiffed. This breaks up the flow of the match in my opinion, and they are extremely tiring to look at this point because we've seen every character's Rage Art over 100 times. 2D games handle this better because supers are so well integrated into a match's flow that they don't really seem out of place. It's almost so my suspicion for round end, replays are no longer a thing because of Rage Art. Many times a match ends with the damage a Rage Art provides, so it would be silly to watch the unique animation and then have to watch it again during a replay. Aesthetics aside, the presence of Rage Art completely changes the metagame of the end of round, where both players are in low health. In previous Tekkens, the onus was on the person losing to come back, but now with the Rage Art lurking in the dark, players have to stop their offensive game plan and retool it in order to not get hit by one of these canned combos and a button. So, for Tekken 8, I'm saying it, Rage Arts have got to go. Rage Drive, on the other hand, I am super okay with. Instead of using the Rage Art on Wake Up like a scrub, you can opt to use your Rage in a Rage Drive instead. Rage Drives are special enhanced moves that are unique to each character and give the move good properties like tracking, plus frames, or for some characters allowing you to screw twice in one combo. These don't break up the flow of the match, they're really fun to see used in the clutch, and generally used more often by skilled players. If Rage Arts went away, people would start using these as a super more instead, and I'm all for it. Tekken 7's balance is another discussion altogether, but as part of the casualization of Tekken, generally every character has some decent measure of wall carry ability, which used to be limited to certain characters who then had weaknesses in other places. Season 4 attempted to remedy this somewhat with more health and increased wall scaling, but as it stands now, everyone can wall carry. Remember back in the day when Lee Mains hung their hat on the ability to wall carry through great skill? Well, now everyone has insane wall carry. Even whipping boys like Lars and Gigas can take you to the wall in 1 to 2 combos. Wall carry should be shifted around a bit and reduced across the board. If you're going to have good wall carry, you should be weaker in other ways to compensate. And likewise, characters with poorer wall carry should have ways to work you to the wall in the neutral. Perhaps this could even be remedied by adding a few more wall-less stages, as stages with walls are very much the norm in Tekken 7. Also, pickups. When I talk about pickups, I mean moves like Lee's back 3-3 that pick up an opponent on the ground if you hit them quick enough with it after they reach the ground. Due to the high combos and strong Oki options in Tekken 7, getting off the ground without getting relaunched is often a 50-50 itself. Pickups, while not really game-breaking, only serve to exacerbate that feeling. Just when you think you've landed safely and are ready to think about your Oki strategy, you find yourself carried back into a combo by a move that picks up. And there are a ton of these in Tekken 7. Also, I think they look stupid aesthetically, so I say give them the boot in Tekken 8. Also, holy flipovers, Batman. Many characters in Tekken 7 have moves that flipped you over into a disadvantageous position while you're laying on the ground. Lee's Blazing Kick, Devil Jin's Steel Pedal, Julia's whatever it's called, will hit you while grounded and flip you away from the opponent, so that they can secure an approach. Oftentimes these moves are 50-50 with full launches or other nasty options that the opponent can use to keep you guessing while on the ground. Obviously, a game has to have 50-50s to open up advanced players to mistakes, but for the beginner to intermediate player, getting up off the ground in Tekken can be a nightmare. I get salty at Tekken. Sometimes everyone does. Even if they're people that are online telling you to get good and whatever tech trap it is won't hit you, I can promise you that they have been salty before too. What gets me the most salty in Tekken is rounds where I don't get to play Tekken because I guessed wrong twice. How many times do you eat a launch at round start, guess wrong on wake up, and end up 50-50 to death at the wall? It's like you didn't even get to play. Some characters are going to have strong Oki and 50-50s, and that's okay. But flipovers force you to act faster because an enemy player can hammer you with these until you have an attempt to get up. So less flipovers and ways to launch rising opponents would be a major gameplay ask for Tekken 8. I also can't pretend that I'm at high enough level to say what characters need flipovers and what don't. I know a character, for example, like Kazuya, it's a core part of his game plan because the 50-50 mixed vortex, it's his entire character. So let's figure out which characters actually need a flipover and give it to them as part of their game plan and take away from other areas, and maybe not make it such a universal tool like it is now. I just feel like we need more of the neutral in Tekken 8, less getting off the ground 50-50. This one is obviously less important. It's a fighting game, so no one is expecting a blockbuster Steven Spielberg production, but here's some of my ideas anyway. The obvious story beat would be another one similar to this one, but it's about Lars and the boys trying to take down Kazuya and G-Corp, with the center focus being on Jin versus Kazuya, the father and son struggle. That would be too simple, so I'm hoping they can use what will no doubt be an updated budget to come up with a few more interesting wrinkles, shall we say. Kazumi worked great as a flashback character, dead at the time of Tekken 7's main story, but playable due to her importance in flashbacks. This would be a great opportunity for the return of Jun Kazama in a similar manner, in my opinion. Jun is a major figure in both Jin and Kazuya's lives for different reasons. If the story is going to be about Jin and Kazuya's final confrontation, I can see a million different ways Jin's flashbacks to life with Jun, or Kazuya's memories about how he and Jun ended up together at the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2, could be relevant to what happens in the story in Tekken 8. It's cheesy, I know, but I honestly would like some sort of redemption arc for Kazuya. Maybe something in Jun's past helps Jin and Kazuya overcome a resurgent devil, or even an Azazel. Jin and Kazuya surviving the final battle would make room for Tekken 9 somewhere down the line, but also neatly tie up their rivalry in one game. Also, heck yeah, I'm biased, but I think it would be hilarious if at the end of the story, because Kazuya is dead or because he's free of Devil's influence, he walks away from the Mishima Zaibatsu and G-Corp, and they end up in the hands of Lee and Violet systems. Maybe we could even see a resolution to the long-awaited Paul vs. Kazuya rematch. How do they arrive at these conclusions? Well, honestly, it doesn't really matter as long as there's something there. I do hope that we see more of the main cast involved in the story this time. The bulk of the cast of Tekken 7 has no bearing on the main plot whatsoever, and this needs to change. Do you remember the story chapters with characters like, I don't know, Katarina? Gigas? Shaheen? Josie Rizal? Anybody? Even if they have to separate character stories mode into a separate mode that shows their arc with other characters, I'd be fine with that. Just make sure everyone has a reason to exist in Tekken 8. There was a lot of stuff in this, and if you made it this far, thanks for watching. You can of course agree or disagree with any of it, and that's fine. You can even think I'm a scrub if you want for my opinions on gameplay changes, and write angry comments below about how bad it is for the community for me to have this mindset. But just remember, not everyone who plays Tekken won EVO last year like you did. The vast majority of competitive, quote-unquote competitive, Tekken players will only ever be somewhere below Tekken content creator level in skill. And that's okay. Don't think that you have to be the best at Tekken to enjoy playing Tekken, or even criticizing Tekken. If you play the game, that's good enough. Just be open to learning where you can improve. I'm not even as good as most content creators on Tekken, but I played the game enough to know what I like and don't like about it, and maybe that'll change as I get better, and that's okay. So, TLDR. Add back the series staple single-player modes and features that were lost because of Tekken 7's shoestring budget. Make sure all the characters have some sort of story mention or at least CGI content endings and intros. Make the game more about movement and less about do everything moves. Drop rage arts to focus on rage drives. Find ways to make matches more about the neutral and movement and not just about 50-50 situations. Add a decent story mode that's not 100% predictable without going off the rails and pigeonholing future entries. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will talk about my opinions on the Tekken 8 roster in a future video. This one was just getting so big, I thought it would be best to talk about the roster in a separate video and just complain about all the other stuff in this one. Anyway, thanks so much, guys, for watching. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and subscribe and share with a friend. Thanks for stopping by as always.